My name is Elias, and this is the story of how my life, my entire reality, was shattered in a single afternoon. It all started with a simple, unplanned decision to come home early. If I had just stayed at work, if I had just gone for a drink like I'd thought about, everything would be different. But I didn't. I came home, and what I saw there left me completely broken. The key felt heavy in my hand, a cold, metallic weight that seemed to resist the lock. It was 2:17 p.m. on a Tuesday. I'd never been home at 2:17 p.m. on a Tuesday before. The quarterly reports were finished ahead of schedule, a minor miracle in the world of high-stakes finance, and my boss, a man not known for generosity, had practically shoved me out the door. "Go, Elias. See that beautiful wife of yours. You've earned it." He had no idea that his simple act of kindness would be the catalyst for my destruction. I pushed the heavy oak door open, the familiar creak a sound I usually found comforting. Today it felt like a warning. The house was quiet, but not empty quiet. It was a thick, expectant silence, the kind that hangs in the air after a shout. I dropped my briefcase by the console table, the sound unnaturally loud. "Lena," I called out, my voice echoing slightly in the vaulted foyer. "Honey, I'm home early." Surprise. No answer. Maybe she was out back in the garden, her hands buried in the soil, coaxing life from her beloved roses. Maybe she was taking a nap, but her car was in the driveway. My eyes caught on a detail, a tiny, insignificant thing that my brain filed away for later. A single, long-stemmed wine glass on the kitchen counter, a faint smear of lipstick on the rim. Lena's shade. Crimson kiss. I walked further into the house, my dress shoes clicking on the polished hardwood. Our home, the one we'd poured our dreams into for the last 5 years. Every piece of furniture, every splash of color on the walls, was a testament to us, to our love. The large, candid photograph of us on our honeymoon in Santorini, laughing as the wind whipped her dark hair across her face. My arms were wrapped around her, my chin resting on her shoulder, a look of pure, unadulterated joy on my face. I remember whispering to her that day, "I will love you until the last star in the universe burns out." I meant it. I meant every single syllable. If you've ever built a life with someone, piece by precious piece, you'll understand the special kind of agony that comes when you feel the first crack. That's what this silence was. A crack. I moved towards the staircase, thinking maybe she was upstairs in her studio, painting, lost in a world of color and canvas with her headphones on. She was an incredible artist. I fell in love with her talent before I even fell in love with her. I used to watch her for hours in her college studio, the way she'd bite her lip in concentration, the way a single drop of paint could travel from her wrist to her elbow, a tiny, colorful scar of creation. She painted the portrait of us that hung over the fireplace. She said she wanted to capture the light in my eyes when I looked at her. Now, I wonder if she was just practicing, perfecting the image of a fool in love. I was about to call her name again when I heard it. A sound. It was muffled, coming from down the hall, from the direction of our bedroom. It wasn't the sound of a paintbrush on canvas. It was a low, throaty laugh. A man's laugh. My blood went cold. It was a cold that started in the marrow of my bones and spread outwards, freezing my muscles, locking my joints. That laugh didn't belong in my house. It was an invasive species, a weed in our perfect garden. Tell me in the comments, what would you do in that moment? Would you charge in? Would you turn and run, desperate to preserve the bliss of ignorance for just a little longer? My feet, heavy as blocks of cement, began to move. They carried me down the hall, past the gallery of our life together, each framed memory now feeling like a mockery. The bedroom door was slightly ajar, just a sliver of damnation. And through that sliver I saw them. My wife, Lena, was in the arms of another man. They were locked in an embrace so intimate, so familiar. It stole the air from my lungs. Her head was thrown back, her eyes closed, a smile on her face I hadn't seen in months. A smile I thought was reserved for me. A smile I'd been desperately trying to coax out of her lately, blaming myself for its absence. I thought I was working too much. I thought I was failing her. I bought her flowers. I planned date nights. I asked her, again and again, "Are you happy, Lena? Are we okay?" And she'd always smile that small, tight smile and say, "We're perfect, Eli. Just tired." But this smile, this was the smile of a woman who was more than okay. This was the smile of a woman in the throes of a passion I clearly hadn't been providing. The man had his back to me. He was tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a dark shirt. His hands were on her waist, pulling her close. I couldn't see his face, but I could see the back of his head, his short, brown hair. I stared, my mind refusing to process the image. It was like watching a horror movie starring my own life. This couldn't be real. This was a nightmare. I was going to wake up any second, sweating and gasping, and I would turn to Lena sleeping peacefully beside me, and I would hold her so tight, thanking God it wasn't real. But the polished wood of the doorframe under my fingertips was real. The sound of their whispered words was real. "I've missed you," the man murmured. His voice a low rumble I couldn't quite place, but it tickled some deep, forgotten part of my memory. "It's only been a few days," Lena replied, her voice breathy, a sound that used to be my personal symphony. "A few days too long," he said, and he leaned in to kiss her. That's when I saw it. As he turned his head slightly, the light from the window caught the side of his face. The profile, the strong jaw, the straight nose. I knew that face. I knew it as well as I knew my own. It was a face I saw in the mirror every single day. The man kissing my wife was my identical twin brother, Marcus. The world didn't just stop. It inverted. The floor fell away from my feet, and I was tumbling through a void of absolute, soul-crushing betrayal. Lena and Marcus. Marcus and Lena. My brother. The man I had shared a womb with. The boy I had built forts with, the teenager I'd covered for with our parents. The man I'd stood by when his own life fell apart. I'd given him a job when he was broke. I'd let him live in our guest house for 6 months after his divorce. I trusted him with my life, with my secrets, with my wife. And he was here in my bed with her. The anger came then, a red, blinding wave that washed away the shock and the cold. It was a primal, violent fury. I didn't think. I didn't plan. I just moved. I shoved the door open so hard it slammed against the wall with a crack that sounded like a gunshot. They sprang apart, 2 guilty figures caught in the spotlight of my rage. Their faces were a perfect canvas of identical horror. Lena's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes wide with a terror that, for a single insane moment, gave me a sliver of satisfaction. Marcus turned, his face pale, his expression one of a boy who'd been caught stealing from the cookie jar. Not a man who just shattered his brother's world. "Elias!" Lena gasped. "Eli, wait. It's not what it looks like," Marcus said, holding up his hands, taking a step towards me. The sound that came out of my mouth was something between a laugh and a sob. "Not what it looks like. It looks like you're kissing my wife, Marcus. In my bedroom. What, pray tell, is it supposed to look like? A friendly greeting? A new form of brotherly bonding? Please, let us explain," Lena pleaded, her voice trembling. "Explain," I roared, my control snapping. "Explain what? How long, Lena? How long has this been going on? With him? Of all people." The two of them exchanged a glance. A glance. It was a quick, silent communication. A language built on shared secrets and stolen moments. That single look was more intimate than the kiss I'd witnessed. Told me everything. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a one-time thing. This was a pattern. This was a life they had built in the shadows of mine. "It's complicated, Eli," Marcus said, his voice low, trying to sound reasonable. Reasonable. The word was a joke. Complicated. I took a step forward. My fists clenched so tight I could feel my nails digging into my palms. "You're my brother. I brought you into my home. I gave you everything. And this is how you repay me. You didn't give me everything, Elias," Marcus snapped, and a flash of his own anger surfaced. "You have everything. You always have. The perfect job, the perfect house, the perfect wife. You just expect me to live in your shadow, grateful for the scraps you throw me. His words hit me like physical blows. Is that what he thought? Is that what this was about? Some twisted, childhood rivalry I never even knew existed? So this is your revenge? I whispered, the anger starting to curdle into a profound, debilitating hurt. You steal my wife? It's not like that. Lena cried, moving to stand beside him. She stood beside him, not me. The sight of them, side by side, a united front against me, in the room where we'd promised to love each other forever, was the final, killing blow. Then what is it like, Lena? My voice was quiet now, drained of all its fire. Tell me. I'm here.
I'm listening.
Explain this complication to me. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Tears were streaming down her face now. Were they for me? For us? Or for the fact that they'd been caught? Marcus put a protective arm around her shoulders. The gesture was so natural, so possessive, it made me feel sick. We fell in love, Eli, he said, and his voice was defiant, as if declaring some great, noble truth. We didn't mean for it to happen, Lena added, her voice a broken whisper. It just did. It just did, I repeated, the words tasting like ash. It just did. For how long? A month? A year? They were silent again. The silence was an answer. Terrible, damning answer. More than a year, I guessed, the reality of it sinking its claws deeper into my soul. My God, the business trips? The girls' weekends. Lena's flinch confirmed it all. Every doubt I'd ever suppressed, every late night I justified, every little white lie I'd accepted, came rushing back, forming a clear, horrifying picture of my own gullibility. I was the clueless husband, the last to know, the world's biggest fool. I looked at Marcus, my own flesh and blood. I saw the boy I'd taught to ride a bike. I saw the man who'd been my best man, standing right beside me, vowing to support my marriage. And I saw a stranger, a viper I had nurtured in my bosom. Get out, I said, my voice dangerously calm. Elias, please, Lena started. Get out of my house, I repeated, looking directly at Marcus. Both of you, get your things and get out. This is her house too, Marcus said, his chin jutting out in that stubborn way I knew so well. Not anymore, I said. I felt a strange, cold clarity descend upon me. The heartbreak was still there, a raw, open wound, but it was being cauterized by a new, focused purpose. I want you both gone. Now, before I do something we'll all regret. They must have seen the finality in my eyes, the dead, cold certainty. Marcus nodded slowly, then turned and started grabbing his things. A jacket thrown over a chair, his phone from the nightstand. My nightstand. Lena was sobbing openly now, but she moved to her closet, pulling out a small suitcase. Couldn't watch. I turned and walked out of the bedroom, down the stairs, and stood in the center of the living room, waiting. I felt like a ghost in my own home. Every object, every memory had been poisoned. The couch where we'd cuddled and watched movies. The kitchen island where we'd shared coffee and morning conversations. It was all a lie. A beautifully decorated, meticulously maintained lie. Stay till the end because what happens next will shock you. This wasn't the end of the pain. It was only the beginning. A few minutes later, they came down the stairs. Lena couldn't even look at me. Marcus held her suitcase, his expression a mixture of shame and defiance. Eli, Marcus said, pausing at the door. I am sorry for the pain, but not for loving her. I didn't respond. I just stared at him, memorizing the face of the man who had killed me without using a weapon. Lena looked at me then, her beautiful, tear-streaked face full of a sorrow that seemed genuine. I never wanted to hurt you, Elias. I love you. I love him too. And with that final, devastating contradiction, they walked out. The door clicked shut behind them. The sound was so soft, so mundane, but it was the sound of my world ending. I stood there for a long time, maybe an hour, maybe two, completely motionless. The silence in the house was absolute now. It was the silence of a tomb. I was alone, more alone than I had ever been in my entire life. The days that followed were a blur of grief and rage. I didn't go to work. I barely ate. I drank. I wandered through the empty rooms of the house, a king dethroned in his own castle. The pain was a physical thing, a constant, aching pressure in my chest. I replayed every moment of the last year, looking for clues, for signs I'd missed. The late-night texts she'd explain away. The new perfume. The sudden distance in bed. I'd blamed myself. I thought I was the problem. I'd been trying to be a better husband, while she was being a wife to another man. To my brother. The anger was my only fuel. It burned hot and bright, keeping the suffocating despair at bay. I wanted revenge. I wanted them to hurt as much as I was hurting. I wanted to burn their new, precious love to the ground and salt the earth so nothing could ever grow there again. But how do you get revenge on the two people who know you best? How do you hurt people who have already proven they are capable of the ultimate betrayal? I decided I would hit them where it hurt. I would take everything. I hired the most ruthless divorce lawyer in the city. I began the process of freezing our joint assets. The house was in my name, a gift from an inheritance I'd received before we were married, so that was safe. But I wanted more. I wanted to destroy Marcus. I started digging into his life, his finances. The job he had was at my company, a favor I'd called in. I would have him fired. I would make sure he was unemployable in this city. I would ruin him. It was during this dark, obsessive phase that I made a discovery that would change everything. I was in my home office, a place I'd been avoiding because it still smelled like Lena's perfume, going through old financial records. I was looking for any hidden accounts, any large withdrawals she might have made to fund their secret life. I found nothing suspicious. She was careful, or she hadn't needed to be, because I was so blindly trusting. Frustrated, I turned my attention to Marcus. I logged into the remote server for my company, intending to gather evidence of his incompetence, or better yet, find some kind of fraud I could pin on him. As I was scrolling through his project files, my eye caught on a folder named L. It was password protected. A cold suspicion trickled down my spine. I tried a few obvious passwords, his birthday, his dog's name, Lena's birthday. Nothing. Then, on a whim, I typed in the name of our childhood dog, Buster. The one we'd both loved. The one we'd buried together in the backyard under the old oak tree. The folder unlocked. My breath hitched. The folder was full of documents, scanned letters, emails, and a single text document titled The Plan. With trembling hands, I opened it, and I started to read. The words on the screen didn't make sense at first. They were in English, but they formed a narrative so monstrous, so calculated, that my brain refused to accept it. It was a timeline, a cold, clinical step-by-step plan for the systematic destruction of my marriage and the acquisition of my assets. According to the plan, the affair hadn't started a year ago. It had started almost from the beginning. Marcus had always been jealous. The plan detailed how he would subtly undermine my confidence, how he would plant seeds of doubt in Lena's mind about my fidelity, about my commitment. He documented conversations he'd had with her, manipulating her, telling her I was distant, that I was unhappy, that I might be seeing someone else at work. He had groomed her. He had preyed on her insecurities, on the normal ebbs and flows of a long-term marriage, and he had twisted them into a narrative that painted me as the villain and him as the understanding, compassionate hero. But that wasn't the twist. That wasn't the thing that broke me all over again. As I read further, my heart pounding a frantic, painful rhythm against my ribs, I found the real truth, the ultimate betrayal. It wasn't just about money or jealousy. It was about something far more precious. The documents included emails between Lena and Marcus from over 3 years ago. They were planning to have a child together. My child. Or rather, a child they would make me believe was mine. According to the emails, they had been trying. They had timed their liaisons with Lena's ovulation cycle. They had discussed what to do if I got suspicious. They had a plan for Lena to seduce me on the same days, to create plausible deniability. They were going to use my love, my desire for a family, to steal my legacy and give it to my brother. They were going to let me raise his child, spend my money on his child, love his child with all my heart, all the while laughing at me behind my back. I felt a vomit rise in my throat. I staggered away from the desk, collapsing to my knees on the floor. The sheer evil genius of it was breathtaking. It was a violation so deep, so fundamental, that it made the physical affair seem trivial by comparison. But then, why didn't they have a child? Lena had never gotten pregnant. I remembered that time. I thought we'd been trying. She'd seemed so eager, so loving. Now I knew it was just part of the act. So what happened? I scrolled further, my vision blurring with tears of rage and horror. And I found the answer. In a later email, Lena wrote to Marcus, "It's not happening, Mark. Maybe it's for the best. I don't know if I can do this anymore. The guilt is eating me alive. He's a good man. He doesn't deserve this." And Marcus's reply was ice cold. "Stay the course, Lena. The plan is everything. The money, the house, the life. It will all be ours. We just have to be patient. If a child isn't part of it, then we'll just take what's his another way." So the baby plan had failed. But the overall mission had not. They had continued. They had waited. They had been patient vultures, circling my life, waiting for the right moment to swoop down and pick my bones clean. I had thought the pain of walking in on them was the worst I could ever feel. I was wrong. This was worse. This was a premeditated, years-long campaign of psychological warfare. The woman I had loved, the woman I had trusted with my deepest fears and greatest joys, had been a co-conspirator in my annihilation from the very beginning. The love I thought we'd built was a scaffold for my own execution. I sat on the floor of my office for a long time, the printed pages of the plan scattered around me like the ashes of my old life. The rage was gone. In its place was a hollow, infinite emptiness. A calm so profound it was terrifying. I had passed through the fire of betrayal and emerged on the other side, not reborn, but erased. I knew what I had to do. Revenge in anger was messy. Revenge from a place of cold, absolute clarity. That was something else entirely. I stood up. I gathered all the documents. I made copies. I stored them in a safe deposit box. I contacted my lawyer again, but this time I didn't scream or cry. I spoke in a calm, measured tone as I laid out the evidence of conspiracy and fraud. I told him I wanted to sue Marcus for intentional infliction of emotional distress, for fraud, for anything we could make stick. I didn't just want a divorce. I wanted a legal obliteration. Then I did one more thing. I called Lena. She answered on the second ring, her voice cautious. "Elias, I know everything, Lena," I said, my voice flat, devoid of all emotion. "I read the plan. I know about the baby." The silence on the other end of the line was absolute. I could almost hear her heart stop. When she finally spoke, her voice was a ragged whisper. "Amy, I can explain." "There is no explanation that will ever make me understand," I said. "I just have one question for you. Was any of it real? Even for a single moment? Did you ever love me? Or was I just a mark from day one?" She began to sob, great, heaving sobs that sounded real. "It was real at the start," she choked out. "I did love you. But Marcus, he got in my head. He made me doubt you. He made me believe you didn't really love me, that you would leave me. He was so convincing. By the time I realized what was happening, I was in too deep. I was trapped. I'm so sorry, Elias."
I'm so sorry."
Her apology meant nothing. It was the plea of a co-conspirator who'd been caught. But her confession, that was everything. I had it all recorded. "Goodbye, Lena," I said, and I hung up. The divorce proceedings were swift and brutal. With the evidence I had, Lena had no leverage. She signed the papers, giving up any claim to my premarital assets and accepting a small token settlement. She was broken, a hollowed-out version of the vibrant woman I'd married. I felt nothing when I looked at her across the courtroom. Nothing at all. Marcus was harder. He fought. He denied everything. He even had the audacity to claim that I was the unstable one, that I had driven Lena into his arms with my neglect. But the documents, the emails, the recorded phone call, It was an avalanche of evidence he couldn't escape. He was fired from his job. I sued him successfully, and a judge awarded me a significant sum, effectively wiping out his savings. He was left with nothing. No job, no money, and as I soon found out, no Lena. Because the final, poetic twist in this entire sordid tale came about a month after the divorce was finalized. I heard from a mutual friend that Lena had left the city. She'd taken the settlement money and moved abroad. Alone. The stress of the exposure, the weight of the guilt, the reality of being with Marcus without the thrill of the secret. It had collapsed their house of cards. The love they'd claimed was so powerful, so all-consuming, couldn't survive the light of day. It was a parasite that could only live in the dark, and when I shone a light on it, it withered and died. Marcus was truly alone now, disgraced, broke, and abandoned by the woman he'd sacrificed his own brother for. That, I realized, was the perfect revenge. I didn't have to lift a finger to punish him further. He was living in his own personal hell, one of his own making. And I knew my brother. His own conscience would be a far more brutal warden than I could ever be. It's been a year now. The house is quiet, but the silence is no longer oppressive. It's peaceful.
Ivere decoratet.
I've painted the walls. I've taken down the old photos. I've started to build a new life, a quieter one. The pain is still there, a dull ache, a scar that will never fully fade. I don't know if I'll ever be able to trust anyone like that again. How could I? Sometimes, in my dreams, I'm still standing at that bedroom door, watching them. I still feel that initial searing pain. But when I wake up, the feeling that remains isn't anger or a desire for revenge. It's a profound, bone-deep sadness for the loss of two people I loved so dearly. My wife and my brother. They are ghosts to me now. I came home early that day, expecting a quiet afternoon with the woman I loved. I never could have imagined the horror that awaited me. It broke me. It shattered me into a million pieces. But slowly, painstakingly, I've been putting those pieces back together. They don't fit the same way anymore. The shape is different. The man I was died in that hallway. The man I am now is harder, wiser, and forever marked by the betrayal of the two people he trusted most. If the story touched you, if you felt that punch to the gut, that ache of a broken heart, then you know that Betrayal tells a story that never truly leaves you. Hit subscribe and don't miss the next heartbreak that will leave you speechless. Because sometimes, the most terrifying monsters aren't hiding in the shadows. They're sharing your bed, and they're wearing the face of your family.